The knock that changed everything. A stranger saved my broken life at 11:47 p.m. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Before we dive in, if this story moves you even a little, please hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I read every single one, and it means the world to see how far my stories travel. Now sit back, pour yourself something warm, and let me tell you about the night a stranger knocked on a broken man's door at 11:47 p.m. and refused to leave until he remembered how to breathe again. At 11:47 p.m., Ethan Carter stood in a kitchen that smelled like cold coffee and failure. His 6-year-old daughter was asleep down the hall. His wife had been dead 18 months. His bank account held $43, and his company was 2 weeks from firing him for mistakes he couldn't remember making. He'd been staring at the same unopened letter for an hour. Then came the knock. 3 sharp raps, too confident to be a neighbor, too late to be anyone good. He opened the door. A woman he'd never seen looked him dead in the eyes and said, "You're not okay, and I know exactly why." The rain had started around 9 and hadn't bothered to stop. Ethan Carter heard it before he felt it, that soft, insistent tapping against the kitchen window above the sink, the kind of sound that used to make Sarah light candles and put on some old record she'd found at a thrift store in Portland. She used to say rain was God's way of telling the world to slow down. He didn't believe that anymore. He didn't believe much of anything anymore. The fluorescent light over the stove flickered, the way it had for 3 months now. He'd told himself he'd fix it last weekend, and the one before, and the one before that. Instead, he stood there at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday in late October, watching the light stutter, holding a mug of coffee he'd poured at 7 and forgotten to drink. The coffee was cold. Everything was cold. On the counter in front of him sat an envelope, white, crisp. The logo in the upper left corner belonged to Halston and Reeve, the law firm his late wife's family had used for 3 generations. He'd opened the mailbox that morning, seen the return address, and something in his chest had tightened so hard he'd actually had to sit down on the front steps for a minute. He hadn't opened it. He couldn't. He already knew what was inside, or at least he had a pretty good guess, and that guess tasted like metal at the back of his throat. From down the hall came a small, soft sound. Maddie turning over in her sleep. She was 6. She still slept with the pink elephant Sarah had bought her the day she was born, the one with the frayed ear and the stitching coming loose along the trunk. Ethan had tried to sew it himself last month and had made it worse. The elephant now looked like it had survived something terrible, which, in a way, it had. They all had. He set the mug down. The sound of ceramic on Formica was louder than it should have been. His phone buzzed on the counter. He glanced at it. A text from Derek, his supervisor at the firm. "We need to talk in the morning. My office. 8 sharp. No please. No hey. No hope you're well." Just the quiet, professional sound of a door about to close. Ethan knew what tomorrow morning was going to be. He'd known for weeks. He'd missed 3 deadlines in the last month alone. Blown a pitch he should have nailed in his sleep. Sent a financial model to a client with a formula error that had cost them $60,000 in projected revenue. They hadn't fired him for that one. They'd sent him home early, told him to take a few days. He'd taken them. He'd spent all 3 in bed with the curtains drawn, pretending he had the flu, while his mother-in-law, Carol, drove in from Hartford to look after Maddie. Carol had looked at him on her way out the door and said, "Ethan, honey, you can't keep doing this." He'd nodded. He'd said thank you. He'd closed the door and he'd cried in the bathroom for an hour because she was right, and because he didn't know how to stop, and because he was so tired he'd started to hate the sound of his own voice. He ran a hand down his face now and felt the stubble he hadn't bothered to shave in 4 days. He caught his reflection in the darkened window above the sink and didn't recognize the man looking back at him. That man had hollows under his eyes you could park a car in. That man's shirt was buttoned wrong. That man looked 45, not 32. "Jesus," Ethan whispered to nobody. He picked up the envelope, set it back down, picked it up again. Sarah had a little sister, Vivian, 30 years old, lived in Boston, worked in marketing, had hated Ethan from the first time she'd met him at a Thanksgiving dinner in 2019, when he'd made a joke about Red Sox fans that had landed with the grace of a bowling ball in a swimming pool. After Sarah died, Vivian had called twice. Once to say she was sorry. Once, 3 months later, to ask, very carefully, very diplomatically, with a lawyer voice that wasn't hers, whether Ethan had considered what might be best for Maddie's long-term well-being. He had hung up on her. He had not spoken to her since. The letter in his hand, he was 90% sure, was the follow-up. He set it down for the fourth time. He walked to the living room. He sat down on the couch, the one Sarah had picked out, the one still indented on the left cushion where she used to tuck her feet under her and read, and he put his head in his hands. I can't, he thought. I can't do this. I can't open it. I can't go to work tomorrow. I can't keep pretending. He didn't cry. He'd stopped crying months ago, which maybe should have been a relief, but somehow wasn't. Somewhere along the way, the grief had stopped being a wave that broke over him and had become instead a climate, a slow gray weather system he lived inside. The rain kept coming, and then, at 11:47 p.m. exactly, he knew the time because he looked up at the clock above the television at the precise moment the sound came. There was a knock at the door. 3 sharp raps. Precise. Unhurried. The way a person knocks when they know you're home and they're not going anywhere until you answer. Ethan sat up. Nobody knocked on his door at midnight. Not in this neighborhood, a quiet middle-class stretch of Elmwood, Connecticut, where the streetlights buzzed and the neighbors collected their mail at exactly 4:15 every afternoon, and nothing interesting had happened since a raccoon got into the Petersons' garage in 2017. He didn't have friends who dropped by. He didn't have friends, period. Not anymore. Sarah had been the friend maker. Without her, the calendar had simply emptied, the way a glass empties when you stop refilling it. He stood up slowly. His knees cracked. He walked to the door and put his hand on the knob and then stopped. Don't, a voice in him said. Don't open it. Whatever's on the other side, you don't want it. He opened it anyway. The woman standing on his porch was maybe 30, maybe a little younger. She had dark hair pulled back in a way that managed to look both deliberate and careless, and she was wearing a charcoal wool coat that had clearly cost more than his monthly rent. She was holding a leather portfolio under one arm and an umbrella in the other hand, and the umbrella was closed, which he noticed because she was soaking wet. Her eyes were gray-green. They were also the most awake eyes he'd seen in a year. She looked him up and down, once, top to bottom, and the corner of her mouth did something complicated. It wasn't a smile, it wasn't pity, it was the expression of someone who had just confirmed something they had already suspected and was now trying to decide whether to be gentle about it. "You're Ethan Carter," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah," he heard himself say. "And you are Lena Brooks." The name meant nothing to him. He waited for it to attach to something, a client, a coworker, a face from Sarah's funeral. And it didn't. He just stood there in his wrong-button shirt and his 4-day stubble and his socks that didn't match, and he stared at her. "I don't know you," he said. "No, you don't." The rain was blowing sideways now, coming up under the eaves of the porch. She didn't move. She didn't ask to come in. She just stood there, looking at him with that awful, knowing calm, and then she said it. "You're not okay." He actually laughed. It came out of him before he could stop it, a short, ugly bark of a sound. "Lady, I don't know who you are or how you got my address, but 11:47 p.m., she said. "You've been standing in your kitchen since 9. You haven't eaten since this morning, and that was half a granola bar from the box in your car. There's an unopened letter from Halston and Reeve on your counter. Your boss just texted you. Your daughter is asleep in the second bedroom on the left. Her nightlight is the one shaped like a crescent moon." Ethan's hand tightened on the doorframe. "How do you—" "And you've been thinking," she went on, her voice not rising at all, "about whether it would be easier for everyone, including Maddie, if you just weren't in the picture. You haven't decided anything, but you've been thinking it." The porch light hummed. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked once and stopped. Ethan's mouth was open. He closed it, opened it again. The rain kept tapping at the gutter. He felt, very distinctly, as though someone had pulled a string somewhere in the middle of his chest and the whole scaffolding was about to come down. "Get off my porch," he said. It came out hoarse. "I don't know who you are or what the hell this is, but you don't get to show up at my house at midnight and—" "I'm going to tell you who I am," Lena said, "and then I'm going to tell you what I want, and then you're going to decide whether to shut the door in my face or let me in. And either way is fine. But I'd rather have this conversation inside, Because your porch light is attracting every moth in the tri-state area, and your neighbor across the street just opened her blinds. Ethan glanced past her. Mrs. Alvarez, in the blue house across the street, was indeed peering out from behind her curtains with the focused intensity of a woman who had been waiting her entire retirement for exactly this moment. He closed his eyes, opened them. Every rational part of his brain was telling him to shut the door. 5 minutes, he heard himself say. Thank you. She stepped past him and into the hallway, and the smell of rain and expensive wool came with her. He shut the door. He stood with his back to it for a second, breathing, and then he turned around. She was already in his living room looking at the photograph on the mantel. Sarah in a blue dress, standing on a beach in Rhode Island, 7 months pregnant, laughing at something just off camera. He had taken that picture. It was the last one he'd taken of her where she'd looked truly happy. Lena didn't touch the frame. She just looked. She was beautiful, she said quietly. Don't. She turned to face him. Okay? He crossed his arms. He didn't sit down. He didn't offer her anything. Talk. Lena set her portfolio on the coffee table. She didn't open it. I work for a private foundation, she said. It's called the Halberd Trust. You've never heard of it. Almost no one has. We don't advertise. We don't take applications. We find people, specific people, in specific moments. And we intervene. Intervene. Yes. With what? With their lives, she said, before those lives become unrecoverable. Ethan stared at her. Are you listening to yourself right now? He said. Do you understand how insane that sounds? Completely. Get out. I will, in a minute. Can I say one more thing first? He didn't answer. He didn't throw her out either. He just stood there, because under all the outrage and the exhaustion and the what the hell, there was a small, cold, quiet part of him that had gone very still, the way an animal goes still when it hears something it can't name. She took it as permission. I'm not a therapist, Lena said. I'm not a social worker. I'm not going to ask you to journal or to sit in a circle or to tell me about your mother. I'm not a grief counselor, and I'm not a case manager, and I'm not, for the love of God, a life coach. I know what those people look like. I've met a lot of them. Most of them mean well, and most of them are useless in the specific way you need someone to not be useless right now. And what's your specific way? Ethan said flatly. I'm going to make you functional, she said. In 30 days. He laughed again. It was a worse laugh than the first one. 30 days? Yes. You're going to, what, fix me in a month. I didn't say fix, Lena said. I said functional. There's a difference. I don't think anyone can fix you, Mr. Carter, and I think if someone told you they could, you'd be right not to trust them. But functional, I can do. Functional meaning you eat, you sleep, you keep your job, or you find a better one. You open that letter on your counter, you walk your daughter to school, you stop lying to your mother-in-law, you stop flinching when someone says your wife's name. He felt his jaw tighten. And what do you get out of this, he said. The foundation gets a case file. I get paid. That's the extent of it. No, that's not how any of this works. People don't just show up at somebody's door at midnight with a deal and expect, I know they don't. So why? She looked at him for a long moment. The rain did its thing against the window. The fluorescent light in the kitchen stuttered and held. Someone did it for me once, Lena Brooks said. That's the whole answer. I know you don't want it. I know it sounds like a con. I know you're going to spend tonight trying to figure out the angle, and tomorrow trying to convince yourself I'm running one. I'm not. There isn't one. You can Google the foundation. You can call our office in the morning. You can run a background check on me, and I'll wait while you do it. My driver's license is in my coat pocket, and I'll hand it over right now if you want to take a picture of it. She reached into her coat. He tensed. She pulled out a slim leather wallet and held it up, open, her license visible. The photo matched her face. The address was in Brooklyn. The name was Lena Brooks. He didn't take it. He just looked at it, and then at her, and then past her, toward the hallway where his daughter was sleeping. Maddie, who last week at dinner had asked him, very seriously, in the voice she used when she was trying to sound grown up, whether he was mad at her. Because she'd noticed, she said, that he wasn't laughing like he used to, and she wanted to know if she had done something. He'd gone into the bathroom after she went to bed that night, and he'd sat on the edge of the tub with his fist in his mouth so she wouldn't hear him. 6 years old. 6 years old. And she thought it was her fault. He looked back at Lena. 30 days, he said. 30 days. And at the end of it? At the end of it, she said, I walk away. Whether you're better or not, whether you want me to or not, that's the deal. I'm not moving in. I'm not your new girlfriend. I'm not a stepmom for your kid. I'm not here to save you. I'm here to put you back on your feet so you can save yourself. And then I'm gone. That's the entire arrangement. And if I say no, then I walk out that door and you never see me again. And I go to sleep tonight and I don't lose any sleep over it because I've offered and you've chosen. That's how it works. He looked down at his hands. He noticed for the first time in maybe a month that his wedding ring was still on his finger. He turned it, once, with his thumb. The skin underneath it was pale and soft and felt like it belonged to someone else. Why me? He said. I don't choose. The foundation does. How? I don't know, she said. I really don't. I get a name and an address and a file, and I show up. I've asked. They don't tell me. All I can tell you is that I've done this 11 times, and 11 times the person I showed up for was exactly where you are right now, within a week of something irreversible, sometimes within a day. He flinched. I'm not, he started. I know, she said. I said you hadn't decided anything. I believe you, but I also know what the shape of it looks like when it's in the room. And it's in the room, Ethan. The sound of his own name in her mouth was strange. Nobody had said it like that in a long time. Not Mr. Carter, not Dad, not, hey, you. Just Ethan, like it was still a name that belonged to a whole person. He sat down. He didn't mean to. His legs just decided. He sat on the couch in the spot that wasn't Sarah's spot, and he put his hands flat on his knees and he stared at the coffee table. I can't afford you, he said. You're not paying me. I told you, the foundation pays me. I don't believe in free things. Smart man, but this isn't free. It's paid for, just not by you. And if I quit halfway through, you can quit whenever you want. I'll walk out and I won't come back. No guilt trip, no speech. The door swings both ways. He was quiet for a long time. Outside, a car passed on the wet street, its tires making that soft tearing sound. I have a daughter, he said. I know. If you do anything that scares her or confuses her or makes her think you're replacing her mother, I will throw you out of this house and I don't care who your foundation is. Understood. And I agree. I'm not going to introduce myself to her as anything. Tomorrow, if we're still doing this, I'm a family friend named Lena who's helping Dad with some work stuff. That's it. She doesn't need to know anything else. Kids don't need the whole truth. They need a version that makes sense. He looked up at her. You've done this before. 11 times. How many of them worked? She paused. 9. And the other 2? One quit on day 4. He's fine now, as far as I know. Remarried, teaches high school in Oregon. The other... She stopped. The other what? The other one I was too late for, Lena said. By 2 days. The room was very quiet. I'm telling you that, she said, because I don't lie to the people I work with. Not even to make them feel better. Especially not to make them feel better. You deserve to know what the numbers are. Ethan looked down at his hands again. His phone buzzed on the coffee table. He glanced at it. Another text from Derek. You there? Tomorrow. 8 a.m. Don't be late. He thought about tomorrow morning. The drive-in. The parking garage. The elevator. Derek's office with the view of the parking lot. And the plant that was always dying. The words were going to have to let you go or some softer, HR-approved version of them. And then the drive home. And then Maddie at 4 p.m. saying, Daddy, how was your day? And him having to figure out what to say. And having to figure out what they were going to eat. And having to figure out what they were going to do about rent and his $43. And the letter on the counter. And Carol's voice saying, you can't keep doing this. He thought about the last 18 months. He thought about the weight of them. How each morning felt like lifting a car off his chest just to sit up. He thought about his daughter asking if he was mad at her. He thought about the letter. Okay, he said. Lena didn't react. She didn't smile. She didn't nod. She just said, okay. 30 days. 30 days. Starting when? Starting tomorrow at 7 a.m. I'll be at your door. Don't shower before I get here. Don't shave. Don't eat. Don't change. I want to see what your actual morning looks like. That's, he started, and then he stopped because honestly, what was he going to say? That's invasive? That's humiliating? He had agreed to this, whatever this was. One more thing, Lena said. She pulled a card out of her portfolio and set it on the coffee table. My number. If you change your mind before 7, call me. I won't show up. No hard feelings. And Ethan? He looked up. Open the letter tonight, she said. Before you sleep. Don't carry it into tomorrow. Why? Because whatever's in it, it's not going to be worse than what you've been imagining for the last week. It almost never is. She picked up her portfolio. She walked to the door. She opened it, and the wet October air came in, and she paused with her hand on the knob and looked back at him. You don't know me, she said. I get it, but for what it's worth, I'm not here to hurt you. I'm really not. I'm here because someone's got to show up for you, and nobody has in a while. She stepped out. The door closed softly behind her. For a long time, Ethan didn't move. Then he walked into the kitchen. He picked up the envelope. He looked at it. He looked at the card on the coffee table. Lena Brooks, it said, in plain black type. A phone number. No title. No company name. No foundation listed. He tore the envelope open. He read the letter standing up under the flickering fluorescent light. It was, as he had guessed, from Vivian's lawyer. It was a formal notice of intent to petition for evaluation of Madeline Carter's custodial environment, citing concerns about her father's mental health, financial stability, and ability to provide adequate care. A hearing date had been proposed. 6 weeks out. The paper trembled in his hand. He sat down at the kitchen table. He set the letter down flat. He pressed his palms against it, as if he could flatten it into something smaller, something less. Then, without quite meaning to, he laughed. A single dry sound, more exhale than laughter. 6 weeks. He had 30 days. He got up. He walked down the hall. He stood in the doorway of his daughter's room and looked at her in the pale crescent glow of the nightlight, one small hand curled under her cheek, the pink elephant tucked against her shoulder, her breath going in and out the way only a child's breath goes in and out, deep, trusting, unbroken. His throat closed. I'm sorry, baby, he whispered. I know I haven't been here. I'm going to try. I don't know how yet, but I'm going to try. She didn't wake up. She didn't hear him. That was probably better. He walked back to the kitchen. He picked up the coffee mug, poured the cold coffee down the drain, and set the mug in the sink. He turned off the stuttering light. He stood in the dark for a moment, listening to the rain, and it sounded, for the first time in a long time, like something other than silence. He didn't know who Lena Brooks was. He didn't know if any of this was real, but at 7 a.m. tomorrow he would be awake, and he would not be alone. And that, for reasons he couldn't yet explain to himself, was the first thing in 18 months that had felt even remotely like standing up. He went to bed. He didn't sleep. But he lay there in the dark, and he listened to his daughter breathing through the wall, and somewhere in the small hours of the morning, for one unguarded second, he let himself think the unthinkable, dangerous thought. Maybe. Just that. Just the one word. Maybe. And outside, the rain kept falling on Elmwood, Connecticut, and somewhere in a rented sedan parked 3 blocks away, Lena Brooks sat with her hands on the steering wheel and her forehead resting against them, and she breathed out slowly, because the hard part, the part where they answered the door, was done, and now came everything else. He did not sleep, not really. He drifted in and out of something that resembled sleep the way a photograph resembles a person. The shape was right, but none of it was warm. Twice he sat up in the dark and reached for his phone to call the number on the card and tell Lena Brooks not to come. Twice he put the phone back down. The second time he noticed his hand was shaking, and he couldn't remember when that had started. At 5:30 he gave up. He got out of bed, his joints popped. His mouth tasted like an old penny. He stood in the bathroom with the light off for a full minute before he turned it on, because he was not ready to see himself, and when he finally did turn it on, he understood why. The man in the mirror looked, frankly, like someone a jury would have concerns about. He thought about shaving. He thought about the thing Lena had said. Don't shave, don't shower, don't change. And he felt a hot little flare of resentment, because who the hell was she to tell him how to show up in his own house? And then the flare died, because who the hell was he to pretend he had been showing up in his own house at all? He went into the kitchen. He did not make coffee. He stood at the sink and drank a glass of water, slowly, the way a man drinks water when he is trying to remember that he has a body. The letter was still on the table where he had left it. He did not look at it. At 6:42, Maddie padded out of her room in her dinosaur pajamas, rubbing one eye with the back of her hand. The pink elephant was tucked under her arm, trailing one stitched-up foot behind her like a small patient injury. "Daddy." "Hey, sweetheart. Why are you up?" "I woke up early." She considered this. 6-year-olds consider things the way small judges consider them, fully, without performance. "You never wake up early." "Well," Ethan said, "today I did." She walked over and put her arms around his leg and leaned her cheek against his thigh, and he put his hand on the top of her head and felt the warm, sleep-soft weight of her. And his chest did that thing it had been doing for 18 months, the squeezing, the slow folding inward, and he breathed through it the way he had learned to breathe through it, which was barely. "Can I have waffles?" Maddie said. "We don't have waffles, Bug." "Cereal?" "Cereal we have." "Is it the good kind?" "It is the only kind. That's not the good kind. I know." She sighed, a long, theatrical 6-year-old sigh, and released his leg and went to the cabinet and dragged a chair over and climbed up on it and got the box down by herself, which she had started doing 2 months ago, and which he had not yet decided whether to be proud of or heartbroken by. She poured her own cereal. She poured her own milk. She spilled a little. She wiped it up with the sleeve of her pajamas before he could get the paper towel. He watched her do all of it, and he thought, "She has figured out how to have breakfast without me. She has figured out a lot of things without me." At 6:56, the doorbell rang. Maddie's head came up, spoon halfway to her mouth. "Who's that?" "A friend of mine." "We don't have friends." He almost laughed. It was the most honest sentence anyone had said in his kitchen in a year. "We have one now. Eat your cereal." He walked to the door. He opened it. Lena Brooks was standing on the porch in jeans and a dark green sweater, and a different coat than the one from last night. This one shorter, more casual, and she was holding 2 paper cups of coffee and a small brown paper bag. Her hair was down today. She looked less like an attorney and more like a person, and for some reason that made it worse, because it meant she hadn't been in costume last night either. This was just what she looked like. "Morning," she said. She held up one of the coffees. "Black. No sugar." I guessed. "I don't—" "You drink it black. I've been in your kitchen. I saw the mug." "You've been in my kitchen for 6 minutes total." That was enough. He took the coffee because his hand was doing it before his brain could object. The cup was warm through the cardboard sleeve. It felt, absurdly, like a kindness. She stepped inside without waiting to be invited, which he was beginning to understand was simply the way she moved through the world, and she towed her shoes off by the door in a way that suggested she had grown up in a house where shoes came off by the door, and she followed him into the kitchen, where Maddie looked up from her cereal with the full, unblinking attention of a child encountering something new in her natural habitat. "Hi," Maddie said. "Hi," Lena said. "You must be Maddie." "I am." "My name's Lena. I'm helping your dad with some work stuff this month." "What kind of work stuff?" "Grown-up paperwork." "That sounds boring." "It is extremely boring." Maddie nodded. That was the correct answer. She went back to her cereal. The audition was over. Lena had passed it without appearing to try, and Ethan felt a small sharp thing in his chest that he recognized after a second as gratitude. And then, a second after that, as suspicion of his own gratitude. Lena set the paper bag on the counter. She opened it. 2 blueberry muffins. The real kind, not the plastic-wrapped gas station kind. She set one on a napkin and pushed it across the counter toward Maddie without saying anything. Maddie looked at the muffin. She looked at her dad. She looked at the muffin again. "Can I?" "Yeah, Bug." She took it. She broke it in half. She ate the top half first, because she was a child who understood the correct order of operations. Lena turned to Ethan. Her voice dropped. Not to a whisper, just to something meant for him. "Carol picks her up at 7:30 for school, right?" "How do you—" "Your fridge. There's a schedule on it. Carol's handwriting. It says MWF 7:30 school." Jesus. "I'm not psychic, Ethan. I just read." He rubbed his eyes. Okay. After she leaves, we talk. Not here. I want you out of the house. I have work. No, you don't. He looked at her. What? Your boss is going to fire you at 8. That's what the text was about. You already know it. I know it. We both know it. So you're not going to work. You're going to call him at 7:45, and you're going to say you need the morning. You'll be in at 1. You want to talk about a transition plan instead of a termination. Those exact words. Transition plan instead of a termination. He's not going to go for that. He will if you give him the option. Derek? That's his name, right? Derek does not want to fire you. Firing you is paperwork. Firing you is HR. Firing you is him having to explain to his VP why he didn't manage you better. If you give him a way to move you sideways instead of out the door, he will take it because it is easier for him. This is not about you. It is about his calendar. Remember that. Ethan stared at her. How do you know any of this? Because I have worked in offices, Ethan. They are all the same office. Drink your coffee. He drank his coffee. At 7:28, a car pulled into the driveway. Carol's silver Camry, still with the dent in the bumper from when she'd backed into a fire hydrant in 2022 and refused to get it fixed because, she said, it gave the car character. Maddie grabbed her backpack and her lunchbox and her elephant, and she came over and hugged Ethan's leg again, harder this time, and she said, "Bye, Daddy." And he bent down and kissed the top of her head and smelled her shampoo and said, "Have a good day, Bug. I'll see you tonight. We'll do something, okay?" "Okay," she said. She didn't ask what. She didn't ask for specifics. She took his, "we'll do something" on faith because she was 6 and because she loved him, and that was almost worse than if she'd pressed him. Carol came to the door. Carol was 63 and had a gray bob and wire-rimmed glasses and the kind of mouth that had said hard things to a lot of people over the years without ever quite raising its voice. She looked at Lena. She looked at Ethan. She did not say anything for a second. "Lena, this is my mother-in-law, Carol," Ethan said. "Carol, Lena, she's helping me with some stuff." Carol said. "Good morning," Lena said. "Morning." Carol's eyes did not leave Ethan's face. They were saying something very specific, and what they were saying was, "We are going to talk about this later." "I'll have her back by 4, Carol said to him. Then to Maddie, "Come on, honey, let's go. You got your mittens?" "I got my mittens." Good girl. And then they were gone, and the car was pulling out of the driveway, and the kitchen was very quiet except for the refrigerator humming, and Ethan turned around and leaned back against the counter and looked at Lena and said, "She hates me." "She doesn't hate you. She thinks I'm going to lose Maddie." "She's scared you're going to lose Maddie. That is different from hating you. You would do well to stop confusing those two things about the people in your life." He closed his eyes. "Call Derek," Lena said. "It's 7:40. Call him at 7:45. Go shower first. 2 minutes. Hot water. Don't shave. Put on a clean shirt. The blue one on the back of your bedroom door. Do not wear the shirt you are currently wearing. It is buttoned wrong and it has cereal on it." He looked down. There was, in fact, cereal on it. "How did you—" "You're not a mystery, Ethan. You're just a tired person who has stopped paying attention. Go. Shower. I'll be here." He went. He showered. The water was scalding, and he let it be. He put on the blue shirt. He did not shave. He came back to the kitchen at 7:43, and Lena was washing Maddie's cereal bowl in the sink, and she had opened the blinds he hadn't opened in a month, and pale October light was coming into the room for what felt like the first time since Sarah died. He picked up the phone. He called Derek. Derek answered on the second ring, which told Ethan everything he needed to know about what kind of day Derek had been planning on having. "Carter." "Derek, hey. Listen. Before you say anything, I want to talk about a transition plan instead of a termination. I know what the meeting is. I'm not going to fight you on the performance piece. I've been bad. I know I've been bad. But I have 11 years at this firm, and I'd rather we figure out how to move me somewhere I can still contribute than have a messy exit that nobody wants. I can be in at 1. Give me 4 hours. Let me come to you with a proposal." There was a silence. It was a long silence. Ethan watched Lena at the sink. She didn't turn around. She just kept washing the bowl, very slowly, using more soap than was necessary. "1, Derek said finally. "You've got until 5. If I don't like what I hear, we're back to the original plan. Understood. Thank you. Carter. Yeah. Don't thank me. Just be better. The line went dead. Ethan set the phone down on the counter. His hand was again shaking. He pressed it flat to the formica until it stopped. Lena turned the water off. She dried the bowl. She put it in the drainer. She turned around and looked at him and raised her eyebrows. Well? 1 o'clock. Told you. Don't. I won't. She dried her hands on a dish towel. Get your coat. Where are we going? Breakfast. Real breakfast. Not a muffin. I know a place. Lena, I have to build an entire transition plan in 4 hours. Yes, and you can't build one on an empty stomach and 4 hours of no sleep. We're going to eat eggs. You're going to drink another coffee. Then we're going to sit somewhere quiet and I'm going to help you write the proposal. It's going to be a 3-page document. I can sketch it in 20 minutes. Get your coat. You're going to help me write it. I'm going to make you write it. There's a difference. He got his coat. They drove in her rental, a dark gray sedan that smelled like the inside of a new car, and faintly of her perfume, which he noticed and then tried not to notice. She drove well. She drove like a person who had grown up somewhere with narrow streets. She didn't try to talk. The radio was off. The only sound was the wet hiss of the tires on the road, and that was fine. The diner she took him to was on the other side of town, a place called Millie's that he had driven past 1,000 times and never once been inside. The booths were green vinyl. The menus were laminated. The coffee pot on their table was refilled twice before their food came, by a waitress named Denise who called them both Han without it feeling like a performance. He ordered eggs over easy, bacon, wheat toast. She ordered the same. When the food came, he looked at it and realized, with a small internal shock, that he was hungry. Not in the abstract, performative way he had been hungry for months, the way a body is hungry when a person has been forgetting to eat, but actually physically hungry, the way a person is hungry when something in them decides it wants to live for another day. He ate. He ate all of it. He ate the toast, and then he ate her toast when she pushed it across the table without comment. He did not cry, but there was a moment somewhere around the middle of the plate when his throat got tight and he had to stop and take a breath. And she noticed, and she didn't say anything, and somehow that was worse and better at the same time. When he was done, she slid a yellow legal pad and a pen across the table. 3 columns, she said. Top left, what you used to be good at. Top middle, what you have been doing wrong for the last 18 months. Top right, what the firm needs from someone in your department that nobody currently provides. Right, I'll be quiet. 20 minutes. 20 minutes, Ethan. Write anything. Write the wrong thing. We'll fix it together. But you have to put something on the paper or I can't help you. He picked up the pen. He wrote for 26 minutes. His hand cramped. He filled the first page and started a second. Some of it was nonsense. Some of it wasn't. In the middle column, he wrote things he had not said out loud, not to Carol, not to Derek, not to himself. He wrote, stopped caring. He wrote, blamed the wrong people. He wrote, didn't ask for help because I was afraid of what asking would mean. He looked at that last one for a long time. In the right column, after staring at the ceiling for 3 minutes, he wrote internal training. He wrote it in capital letters. He underlined it twice. Because the firm had been hemorrhaging junior analysts for 2 years, and nobody was teaching them anything, and the senior people didn't have time to, and he had been a good teacher once, back before. He had been the person the kids came to when they didn't understand something. He had forgotten that about himself. He turned the pad around and pushed it across to her. She read it. She didn't read it fast. She read it the way a person reads a contract, every line, in order, with no rush. When she was done, she looked up. There it is, she said. What? Your pitch. Right there. Middle column, you take accountability. Right column, you offer him a problem you can solve for him. You become the person he doesn't have to fire because you're worth more to him fixed than gone. You ever build a training program before? No. Doesn't matter. You've been trained by about 40 of them. You know what worked and what didn't. Write the one you wish you'd had in year 2. 3 pages, bullet points, and a timeline. You have until 12:30. I'll drive you back to your house at 11. You sit at your kitchen table. You write. No internet. No phone. Just the pad. You're not going to help me write it. No. You said you were going to help me write it. I said I was going to make you write it. You wrote the hard part just now, the part that was honest. The rest is just shape. You can do shape. He sat back in the booth. He looked at her across the table and he said, slowly, because he needed to say it, I don't understand you. You don't have to. Why are you doing this? I told you. Someone did it for you. I heard you. That's not an answer. That's a sentence. She looked at him. The diner clattered around them. A booth over, a man laughed at something on his phone, a loud, barking laugh that startled the waitress. I was 24, Lena said. I was living in a studio in Providence. I had a job I hated and a boyfriend who was worse than the job. My mother had died the year before, and I had handled it by, essentially, not handling it. I had been fired from 2 jobs for being unreliable. I was 3 months behind on rent. I had stopped returning my brother's calls. One night, I was sitting on the floor of my apartment with a bottle of wine and a bottle of my mother's leftover pills, and I was doing math. She said this the way a person says it when they've said it before. Not numb, not performing, just factual. A woman knocked on my door at 11:53 p.m., she said. Her name was Jeanette Okafor. She worked for the same foundation I work for now. She sat on my floor with me for 6 hours. I don't remember most of what she said. I remember she didn't take the pills away. She didn't ask me to give them to her. She just stayed. And in the morning, she made me go to the pharmacy with her and return them, because, she said, they weren't mine. And then she spent 30 days in and out of my apartment, asking me questions I hated and making me do things I didn't want to do. And at the end of the 30 days, she hugged me and she got on a train and I didn't see her again for 4 years. Is she? She's fine. She's retired. She lives in Santa Fe. I visit her twice a year. She's the closest thing I have to a parent who isn't buried. I started working for the foundation when I was 28 because I asked Jeanette what I could do to pay her back. And she said, you don't pay me back. You pay it forward. That's how this works. So here I am, paying it forward. He didn't know what to say. That's the answer, Ethan. That's the whole answer. There's no catch. There's no angle. I'm not in love with you. I'm not going to be. I'm doing a job I believe in because somebody did it for me when nobody else would, and I happen to be good at it, and that's all. He looked down at the legal pad. The letters swam a little. I'm sorry, he said. For what? I've been treating you like you're running a con. You've been treating me like a reasonable, skeptical person. Don't apologize for that. I'd be worried if you hadn't. She drank her coffee. The waitress refilled it. The waitress called her on. She thanked her. Finish your coffee, Lena said. We're going to your house. You're going to write this thing, and then you're going to that meeting, and you are going to keep your job, and you are going to come home, and you are going to have dinner with your daughter, and you are not going to disappear into your own head at the table. That is the deal for today. Small deals. That's how this works. We don't do the whole life in one morning. Okay, he said. And Ethan. Yeah? The letter from your sister-in-law's lawyer. We're going to deal with it. Not today. But we are going to deal with it. You are not going to lose your daughter. You need to hear me say that out loud so you can stop carrying it alone for the next 8 hours. You are not going to lose your daughter. His eyes burned. He looked down at the legal pad until they stopped. Okay, he said again. He wrote the pitch in 1 hour and 40 minutes at his kitchen table with the pad in front of him and a fresh pot of coffee beside him that Lena made and then left him alone with. She went into his living room and sat on the couch. Not on Sarah's side, he noticed. She sat on his side. And she worked on her laptop with headphones in and did not bother him once. When he got stuck, he got unstuck on his own, and every time he did, it felt like a muscle he had forgotten he had. At 12:21, he capped the pen. He walked into the living room. She pulled one earbud out. Done. Let me see. He gave her the pages. She read them. She didn't smile. He was starting to realize, not a smiler. But she nodded, twice, at specific places, and at the end she handed them back. 3 things, she said. You buried your best line on page 2. Move the sentence that starts with the firm has lost 14 analysts in the last 18 months to the top of page 1. Lead with the wound. Then, on page 3, you use the word I 41 times. Cut it to 15. Make it about what the department gets, not what you personally feel you can offer. And last, the sentence at the bottom where you apologize. take it out. Not because you shouldn't apologize, you should, but not in writing, not in the proposal. Apologize to his face, in his office, for about 30 seconds, and then move on. If you apologize on paper, he has to file it. If you apologize in person, he gets to be the guy who accepted an apology, and he'll like being that guy, and it'll cost him nothing. Give him the chance to be generous. People are always more generous when they're being watched by themselves. He took the pages back. He rewrote them at the table. He came back out at 12:38. Better, she said, reading. Go. Wear the navy tie. Not the gray one. The gray one makes you look like you're going to a funeral. He went. He drove himself to the office. He parked in his regular spot. He took the elevator up. He walked past his cubicle without sitting down, because he did not want to see the stack of things he hadn't done, and he went straight to Derek's office. Derek was behind his desk. The dying plant was still dying. The parking lot outside the window was still full of other people's cars. Ethan sat down across from him. He put the 3-page proposal on the desk. He said, "Before you read it, I want to say something." Derek leaned back, folded his arms. "Go. I have been bad at this job for a year and a half. I know why. It doesn't matter. You don't care why. You shouldn't care why. I've cost the firm money. I've let my team down. I missed the Hartley deadline. I blew the Ridgemont pitch. I sent Linwood a deck with a broken formula, and you had to clean it up with their CFO, and I never once came to you and said thank you for cleaning it up. I'm saying it now. Thank you for cleaning it up. I was wrong not to." Derek's face did not move, but something in his shoulders did. "Read the proposal," Ethan said. "If you still want to fire me at the end of it, fire me. I won't argue, but I think there's a better version of me that's worth more to you in the analyst development seat than the version you're about to let go. And I think you know that, or you wouldn't have given me until 5. He stopped. He made himself stop. Lena's voice in his head, 30 seconds and move on. Derek picked up the proposal. He read it. He read it slowly. Ethan watched a vein in the side of Derek's neck that he had been watching for 11 years and had learned to read like a mood ring. The vein was not today the color it was when Derek was about to say no. Derek set the proposal down. "The training program. Yes, you'd run it. I'd build it. I'd run the first cohort. We'd see how it went. If it worked, I'd hand it to whoever you wanted after year 1 and go back to client work. Pay cut. 15% starting next quarter. I put it on page 3. I saw it. It's a lot. It is a lot, and you're offering it, which tells me you mean it." Derek drummed his fingers on the desk. 6 months. Probation. Monthly one-on-ones with me, not HR. You miss one deliverable, we're done. No second conversations. Understood. And Carter. Yeah. Whoever got to you between last night and this morning, keep them around. Because the person who walked in here just now is not the person who sent me that formula last month. I don't know what happened. I'm not asking. But don't lose it. Ethan's throat did something. He swallowed it down. I won't. He left. He walked out of the building, and he stood in the parking lot, and he tipped his face up to the sky, and it was gray, October gray, the kind of sky that didn't promise anything. And he stood there for a long time breathing in the cold, damp air. And he did not cry, but he also did not move. When he got in his car, there was a text on his phone. How'd it go? He wrote back, 6 months probation, still employed, pay cut. The reply came in under a minute. Good. That's today's win. Go pick up your daughter. He put the phone down. He started the car. He did not go straight home. He drove, instead, to the florist on Maple. The small one, the one Sarah used to love. And he bought a little bouquet of yellow chrysanthemums, not for Sarah, but for Carol, because Carol had driven his daughter to school every Monday, Wednesday, Friday for a year and a half, and he had never once said thank you, and he had a debt to pay that was not about Lena Brooks or foundations or anything except the woman who had lost her own daughter and was still every week holding up his. He drove to Carol's. He rang the bell. She opened the door. She looked at the flowers. She looked at him. She did not say anything. She stepped aside and let him in and closed the door behind him, and he stood in the entryway of her house, the house Sarah had grown up in, and he held out the flowers and he said, Carol, I'm sorry. I've been a bad son-in-law and a worse father. And I know you got the letter from Vivian too, because she would have copied you on it. And I want you to know I'm not going to let her take Maddie. I am not. But I also want you to know I understand why you haven't told her to stop. Carol took the flowers. She held them against her chest. Ethan, she said. I'm going to be better, he said. I know I've said that. I know I've said it, and I haven't done it. But I met someone yesterday. Not like that. Just someone who is helping, and I'm going to be better, and I need you to give me 30 days before you decide I'm not. Carol looked at him for a long time. Her eyes were the same eyes as Sarah's. They always had been. It was the cruelest thing about her face. 30 days, Carol said. Yes. She nodded, slowly. She looked down at the flowers. She'd have liked these, she said. I know. Yellow was her favorite. I know. Come inside. I'll put them in water. Maddie's watching a show. She'll be thrilled you're early. He came inside. He took his shoes off. And when Maddie came running around the corner and crashed into his legs and shrieked, "Daddy, you're early! You're early!" he picked her up. He hadn't picked her up in 2 months. His back was bad, and he used his back as an excuse. And he held her against his shoulder, and he closed his eyes, and he smelled her hair. And in the kitchen, Carol ran water into a vase. And outside, the October sky held its gray. And somewhere 3 miles away, in a rental car in a parking lot, a woman named Lena Brooks wrote Day 1, complete in a small black notebook, and closed it, and let out the breath she had been holding since 7 that morning. Day 1 ended well, and Day 2 ended well, and Day 3 ended well. And then, because this was a real life and not a television show, Day 4 fell apart. It fell apart at 6:14 in the morning when Ethan's phone rang, and it was Carol, and her voice was the thin, flat kind it got when she was trying very hard not to sound like she was crying. Ethan, Maddie's running a fever. 103. She threw up twice in the night. I didn't call because I thought it would break. It hasn't broken. I think she needs to go in. He was out of bed before she finished the sentence. He was in the car 4 minutes later. He was at Carol's front door at 6:28 in sweatpants and a sweatshirt he'd pulled on inside out. And Maddie was on the couch under a blanket, and her cheeks were the color of a bad sunset, and her eyes were glassy, and she looked at him and whispered, "Daddy?" in the voice that undoes every father who has ever been a father. He scooped her up. Carol was already holding the car seat. They drove to St. Brendan's Pediatric in Carol's car because Carol said she didn't trust him behind the wheel right now, and she was right, and he didn't argue. In the waiting room, under the fluorescent lights that hummed the same sick hum as the ones in his kitchen, he sat with Maddie on his lap, and she dozed against his chest, and her breath came in and out too fast, and he held her, and he did not move, and he did not look at his phone, and he did not think about work, and he did not think about Lena Brooks, and he thought only, please. Not a prayer, not aimed anywhere, just please, the way a person says it when there is no one to say it to. They took her back at 7:10. Strep, the doctor said. Bad case. Dehydrated. They do IV fluids for a couple of hours, start her on antibiotics, send her home by lunch. She'd be fine. She was going to be fine. Everything was fine. Ethan nodded. He said thank you. He went out to the hallway, and he sat in a plastic chair, and he put his face in his hands, and the noise that came out of him was not a sob, exactly. It was more like a valve releasing. And he stayed bent over like that for what might have been a minute or 10 minutes. He couldn't tell. When he sat back up, Lena was standing at the end of the hallway. He blinked at her. Carol called me, she said, walking toward him. I gave her my number yesterday. I hope that's okay. Yeah, it's okay. How did you... Drove. I mean, why did you... Because you shouldn't be sitting alone in a hallway. She sat down in the chair next to him. She didn't touch him. She didn't ask any questions. She just sat. And she was wearing jeans and a coat and no makeup, and her hair was still wet at the ends like she hadn't bothered to dry it. And she said, "She's going to be okay, Ethan. Kids get sick. This is what happens." I know. I know you know. His voice caught. He had to stop and steady it. I was standing outside the exam room, and I looked at her through the little window, and I thought, this is what it's going to be like if I lose her forever. This is the feeling stretched out across the rest of my life. And I couldn't For a second I couldn't. I know. Lena, I can't. I can't do that. I can't lose her too. You're not going to. You don't know that. I know it about today, she said. That's all anyone ever knows. About anything. Today she's going to be okay. And today, you are sitting in this hallway, awake, being her father, not somewhere else, not checked out. Here. That is the only thing you are required to do today, and you are doing it. He looked at her. The fluorescent light was cruel to both of them. She looked tired. He had not noticed in 3 days that she ever looked tired. You didn't have to drive out here. I know. Thank you. You're welcome. Carol came out a few minutes later with 2 cups of terrible vending machine coffee. She looked at Lena. She looked at Ethan. She handed 1 cup to Ethan and the other, after a pause so small only the 3 of them could feel it, to Lena. She's asleep, Carol said. They got the line in. She didn't cry. She didn't cry. She said she didn't want you to hear her crying because she didn't want you to worry. Carol's voice caught on the last word. She pressed her lips together. 6 years old. I don't know where she learned that. I don't know if I taught her that or you did or her mother did before she... Carol. I know. Sit down. She sat. The 3 of them sat in the row of plastic chairs, nobody talking, and the hallway was full of the small awful sounds hospitals are full of. A cart rolling past, a phone ringing at a nurse's station, a child crying somewhere behind a door and being hushed. Ethan drank the coffee. It tasted like something that had been brewed during the Carter administration and then reheated every day since. He drank all of it. Lena, Carol said after a while, not looking at her, looking at the wall. Yes, ma'am. I don't know what you are to him, or to us. I'm not going to pretend I do, but I want to say thank you for coming. You don't have to thank me. I know I don't. That was the end of it. Nobody said anything else for a long time. They discharged Maddie at 12:40. She was pale and limp, and she wanted her dad to carry her to the car, so he did, and she wanted her dad to buckle her into the car seat. So he did, and she wanted her dad to ride in the back with her, so he did. While Carol drove and Lena followed in her rental, and when they got back to Carol's house, he carried Maddie inside and up the stairs to the guest room that was really Maddie's room now, and he laid her down in the bed, and he pulled the quilt up to her chin, and she looked up at him with those glassy eyes, and she said, Daddy, don't go to work. I won't, Bug. Promise. I promise. Stay till I fall asleep. I'll stay all day if you want. Okay. She closed her eyes. Her breathing evened out in under 3 minutes. He sat on the edge of the bed and he watched her face, and he did not move for a long time. When he came downstairs, Carol was in the kitchen making soup from a can, which was how Carol expressed emotion. Lena was at the kitchen table with her laptop open, not working, just sitting with it, the way people sit with a laptop when they want to look like they're occupying space for a reason. I have to call work, Ethan said from the doorway. Already done, Lena said without looking up. I emailed Derek from your account. I had your password from yesterday when I helped you send the proposal. I told him your daughter was in the ER and you'd be out for the rest of the day and in touch tomorrow about the week. He wrote back in 40 seconds. He said take the time. He said he hoped she was okay. He said a human sentence, Ethan. He's not going to fire you for this. You had my password. I watched you type it. Lena, that's not... I know. I'm sorry. I should have asked. I panicked. I wanted to protect the thing we did on Tuesday. I won't do it again without asking. He rubbed his face. It's fine. Thank you. Carol set a bowl of soup in front of him without saying anything. He sat down. He ate it. It was hot, and it was salty, and it was the best thing he had eaten in a year and a half, because it was handed to him by a woman who had every reason to hate him and had chosen, instead, to feed him. At 4, Maddie woke up long enough to drink half a cup of Gatorade and eat 3 crackers, and then she fell back asleep. At 6, she woke up hungry, which was the sign the doctor had told them to watch for, and she ate some of the soup, and she asked for her elephant, and Ethan went out to the car to get it from her backpack because she'd forgotten it there that morning, and when he came back in, Lena was standing in the front hall with her coat on. You're leaving. I wasn't going to make it a thing. Stay for dinner. Ethan, Carol made too much soup. There's bread. Stay. She looked at him. Whatever she saw in his face, she didn't argue with it. She took her coat back off. At the table, the four of them, Ethan and Carol and Lena, and the quiet presence of a small sleeping girl upstairs, ate soup and bread and did not talk about Vivian, and did not talk about the letter, and did not talk about the foundation, and Carol told a story about Sarah at 16 driving her father's car into a mailbox, and Ethan laughed. He laughed, actually laughed, a short, real laugh that surprised him more than anyone else at the table. And Lena watched him laugh, and she did not say anything, and her eyes did the thing eyes do when a person is witnessing something they know they are only supposed to witness, not comment on. Carol drove him and Maddie home at 8. Lena followed in her car because it was on the way to her hotel, she said, and because she was not staying, she said, she was just making sure Maddie got inside. Maddie fell asleep in the car. He carried her up to her room. He put her in her pajamas without waking her. He had done it 1,000 times. It was the one thing he had never stopped being good at. And he tucked her in and kissed her forehead, which was cool now, and he stood in the doorway for a minute watching her breathe, and then he went downstairs. Carol was at the door. She had her keys in her hand. She hugged him. She had not hugged him since the funeral. Ethan. Yeah, keep her. Keep the woman. Whoever she is, whatever she is, keep her. She left. He shut the door. He stood in the front hall. He leaned his forehead against the door and he breathed. There was a knock. He opened it. Lena was standing there. She had not, in fact, left. I was going to go, she said. I'm going. But I wanted to say, you did well today. You were her dad, the whole day. No part of you was anywhere else. That's not a small thing. Come inside. Ethan, just for a minute, please. She came inside. She stood in the hallway. She did not take off her coat. He didn't know what he wanted to say. He only knew he didn't want her to leave yet. My wife, he said. She waited. My wife died of a brain aneurysm, he said. In the kitchen, right there. She was standing at the sink. She was making tea. It was a Tuesday. She was 29. She had been complaining about a headache for 2 days. I told her to take an Advil. I told her she was fine. I told her I had a call at 3 and could she pick up Maddie because I couldn't leave the office. I said it like she was the one being difficult. That was the last thing I said to her. And then my phone rang at 3:07 and it was her neighbor, our neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, across the street. And she had heard Maddie screaming through the walls because Maddie had come downstairs and found her. He stopped. He didn't know why he was telling her this. He hadn't told anyone this. Not Carol, not his own mother, not the therapist he'd seen for 3 sessions and then stopped going to, not the grief group he'd gone to once and then walked out of. Maddie found her mother on the kitchen floor, he said. She was 4. She sat next to her and shook her. The 911 dispatcher told me this later. They got the whole thing on the call because Maddie picked up the phone. Maddie called 911. 4 years old, she pressed the buttons. And she told them her mommy wouldn't wake up, and she didn't know what to do, and could they please come? Lena's eyes had gone very bright. The thing is, he said, I was on a conference call. When the neighbor was trying to reach me, I had my phone on, do not disturb. Because I was closing a deal, and the neighbor called 7 times, and I didn't see any of them until the call ended. And by the time I got there, by the time I got home, they had already taken her. Sarah. They had already taken her. And Maddie was on the porch with Mrs. Alvarez, and she was not crying. She was just sitting there. And she looked at me when I got out of the car and she said, Daddy, Mommy is sick. He wiped his face with the back of his hand. He had not known he was crying. He wasn't doing it in a big way. It was leaking out of him, silently, the way water leaks out of an old pipe. I didn't go into our bedroom for 11 months, he said. I slept on the couch. I couldn't. The sheets still smelled like her and I couldn't. And every time I picked up Maddie from daycare and she asked me when Mommy was coming home, I would make up another reason. I told her Mommy was on a work trip. I told her Mommy had to help a sick friend. I lied to a 4-year-old for 3 weeks because I couldn't say the word. I couldn't say dead. I still have trouble saying it. Sometimes when I say it out loud, it sounds like I'm making it up, like I'm being dramatic, like I'm performing a grief I haven't earned yet. Ethan. And then I had to say it. Carol made me say it. Carol sat me down at the kitchen table, her kitchen table, and she said, you have to tell her. If you don't tell her, I'm going to tell her. And I told her. I sat on the floor of Maddie's room with her in my lap and I told her her mother was not coming back. And Maddie did not cry. That's the thing. She looked at the wall and she said, "Okay, Daddy." And she went and got her elephant. And she asked if we could have pasta for dinner. He was sitting on the bottom step of the stairs now. He didn't remember sitting down. His hands were on his knees and they were shaking again. "I think I failed her," he said. "I think I failed her in the first minute, when the phone rang, when I didn't pick it up, when my wife was dying and I was closing a deal. I think I failed her, and I've been trying to not think about it for 18 months, and it's been eating me, and I can't keep doing it, Lena. I can't keep carrying it. It's too heavy. I don't have the shoulders for it." Lena sat down beside him on the step. She did not put her arm around him. She did not tell him it wasn't his fault. She did not tell him he was being too hard on himself. She did not offer a single one of the sentences that people with the best intentions had been offering him for 18 months, and all of which he had come to hate, because they were the sentences of people who wanted the conversation to be over. Instead, she said, "Do you want to hear what I think?" "Yes. I think you didn't fail her. I think you couldn't have known. I think an aneurysm doesn't care what you were doing at 3:07 p.m. I think the universe does not grade parents on reaction time. I think if you had been sitting next to her in that kitchen when it happened, she still would have died, because that is what that kind of aneurysm does. And I think that you know all of that intellectually, and that it doesn't matter, because what's eating you isn't what actually happened. What's eating you is the story you've been telling yourself about what it meant. You have decided that the missed call is the verdict on the whole marriage, the whole fatherhood, the whole you, and you keep serving yourself that verdict every day, like a sandwich you can't stop eating." He laughed. It was a bad laugh. It was also a real one. Yeah. And I'm going to tell you something, and you can take it or leave it. You did not fail your wife. You did not fail your daughter on the day she died. The day you started failing your daughter was about 4 months later, when you stopped showing up at bath time, and it's been a long, slow failure, and it is fixable, because you are still alive and so is she. The past is not fixable. You cannot go back to 3:07 on that Tuesday, but bath time tomorrow, that you can do. Picking her up at daycare, that you can do. Sitting on the floor and playing with her pink elephant, that you can do. Small things. Small things that you do every day until they add up to a different version of you that your daughter can actually remember later. You cannot make up for the last 18 months, but you can make the next 18 months worth remembering. Those are the only two options. And you have been choosing door number 3, which is disappear, and door number 3 is closed now, Ethan. I closed it. I'm sorry. I really am. But it's closed. He looked at her. "You didn't fail her today," Lena said. "You sat in a hospital hallway, and you held her, and you carried her up the stairs, and you put her in her pajamas without waking her up. Today you were her father. Tomorrow, do it again. That's the whole thing. That is the whole assignment." He put his head in his hands. "I'm scared," he said. It came out muffled, came out small. "I'm so scared, Lena." "I know. I'm afraid that I've already lost it. The good version. The version of me that could have been her dad. I'm afraid I let it go too long and there's nothing left. I'm afraid I already lost her, and I just don't know it yet." "You haven't. How do you know?" "Because she asked you to stay until she fell asleep. Kids who have lost their fathers don't ask for that. They've stopped asking for that. She hasn't." He made a sound. He didn't know what kind of sound. He was crying now, not leaking, actually crying, the way he had not cried in 18 months. The way he had refused to cry because he had been afraid if he started, he wouldn't stop. And now he was crying and he was stopping and also not stopping. And the sound that came out of him was the sound a man makes when something he has been sitting on for a very long time finally sits up. Lena did not move. She did not hug him. She did not rub his back. She stayed on the step next to him, not touching him, just there, the way Jeanette Okafor had stayed on the floor of her studio apartment in Providence 12 years ago. And she let him do the thing he needed to do. And she did not try to shorten it, and she did not try to fix it, and she did not say shh, because shh is what you say to a child. And Ethan was not a child. Ethan was a grown man who had been holding his breath for 18 months, and he deserved now to breathe. It took a long time. When it stopped, he was slumped forward with his forearms on his knees, and his face was wet, and his nose was running, and he felt scraped out and enormous, and about 3 pounds lighter than he had felt in a year. "Sorry," he said. "Don't." "Okay. Don't apologize for that. Ever. Not to me, not to anyone. That was overdue." "Yeah." "Do you want water?" "Yes." She got up. She went to the kitchen. She came back with a glass of water. He drank it. She sat back down. "Maddie's room is right above us," he said after a minute. "I know. I kept my voice down. You did too. She didn't hear." "How can you—" "Because I've been listening for her the whole time we've been sitting here. The floor above us is quiet. She's asleep." Somebody had to keep an ear out, Ethan." He started to cry again, a little. Not the same kind. A smaller kind. A more tired kind. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't thank me. I told you. You pay it forward someday. Not now. Now you go to bed, you set an alarm, you get up tomorrow. You take tomorrow off work. Derek's not going to care, I already set it up. And you sit on the couch with your daughter and you watch whatever movie she wants to watch, even if it's the one about the singing trolls, and you let her fall asleep on your chest. Those are the orders. Okay? And Ethan, yeah, the thing you just told me, about the day she died, about the missed call. I want you to tell it to someone else, this week. Someone who knew her. I don't care who. Carol. Your brother. A friend from college. Someone who isn't me. Say it out loud once to a person who loved her. Because you've been carrying it like a secret. It isn't a secret, it's a grief. Those are different. Secrets rot. Griefs don't, if you let them out in the light. Okay. I'm going now. Okay. She stood up. She looked down at him. Something in her face moved. A thing he could not name. A thing that did not belong on the face of a professional fixer sent by a foundation to make him functional in 30 days. It was there for only a second. Then it was gone. You're halfway, she said. Halfway where? Day 15 is tomorrow. We're halfway. I wasn't going to tell you that because I didn't want you to count, but I think tonight you've earned the knowledge that you are further along than you think. She opened the door. She stepped out. She paused on the porch. Get some sleep, Ethan. Lana. She turned back. The other person, he said. The one you were too late for. By 2 days. Yeah. What was his name? She looked at him for a long time. Daniel, she said. He was 41. He had a son who was 10. He opened the door when I knocked, and he told me he was fine, and he closed the door in my face. And I drove home. And I didn't come back. And I should have come back. I should have sat in my car in front of his house for 3 days if I had to. That is the thing I carry. That is my missed call. You understand? Yes. So when I tell you that it is not your fault what happened in that kitchen on that Tuesday, it is not some line I am feeding you. It is something I have thought about every day for 6 years. We cannot always save them. Sometimes the door closes and we are too late. But Ethan, you opened the door 4 nights ago. You opened it. That is the difference. And I am not going to be too late with you. Do you hear me? Yes. Good. Sleep. She walked down the steps. She got in her car. She drove away. He stood in the doorway for a long time. The street was quiet. The streetlight at the end of the block was buzzing. Mrs. Alvarez's house was dark. He went inside. He locked the door. He went up the stairs. He stood in the doorway of Maddie's room and he watched her sleep, and he did not feel the old familiar fist in his chest. Or maybe he did, and he was just too tired to notice it. Or maybe, the fist had loosened one finger. Just one. Just enough to breathe around. He went to his bedroom. Their bedroom. The bedroom he had not slept in for 11 months and had only recently, in the last 3 weeks, started sleeping in again, on Sarah's side by accident the first night and then on purpose every night since. He lay down. He did not take off his shirt. He did not brush his teeth. He did not set an alarm. He closed his eyes. Somewhere in the house, the refrigerator hummed. Somewhere above him, his daughter breathed the deep, unbroken breath of a child whose father had stayed. Somewhere 3 miles away, in a hotel room he would never see, A woman sat on the edge of a bed with her coat still on and her hands pressed flat against her thighs and her head bowed, and she did not cry either, but she sat like that for a long time. Because day 15 had taken something out of her that she would not be able to replace tonight, and because Daniel's face was in the room with her, and because this one, with the blue shirt and the cereal on it, and the little girl who called 911 at 4 years old, was going to make it. She could feel it. She knew it the way she knew her own name. He was going to make it, and she was going to have to let him go in 15 days. And that was the job. He slept. For the first time in 18 months, he slept without dreaming. And he woke up at 9 and did not immediately reach for his phone, and that too was new. The next 2 weeks did not unfold the way the movies would have unfolded them. There was no montage. There was no swell of music. There were, instead, mornings, one after another, each one a small stubborn thing that had to be built from scratch. He got up at 6:30. He made Maddie's lunch himself. He packed the good crackers on the left side of the box, the way she liked, and he wrote her a note on a napkin every day. Not a long one, just, "I love you. Have a good day, Dad." And on the third day, she came home and asked him if she could start writing him back. And he said yes, and she did. In red crayon, "I love you too, Daddy." And he put that napkin in his wallet, and it was still there a week later when he pulled it out at a gas station and had to turn his face toward the pump so the attendant wouldn't see him. He called his brother. He hadn't spoken to Michael in 10 months. He called him on a Sunday afternoon while Maddie was at a birthday party, and he sat in his car in the parking lot of the bounce house place, and he told Michael about the day Sarah died. The whole thing, the call, the 307, the neighbor, Maddie on the porch. Michael cried. Ethan had never heard his brother cry before, not at the funeral, not on the phone in the weeks after. And when Michael was done crying, he said, "You dumb asshole, why didn't you call me?" And Ethan said, "I don't know." And Michael said, "Call me next week." And Ethan said, "Okay," and he did. He went back to work. He showed up at 8:30 every morning. He did the work. He ran the first analyst training session on a Thursday, and it was rough. And he knew it was rough. And one of the junior analysts asked him a question about cap rates that he used to be able to answer in his sleep, and he blanked on it completely and had to say, "I'll get back to you on that." And the kid nodded and wrote it down and did not think any less of him, because 24-year-olds do not, it turns out, expect their supervisors to be gods. They expect them to show up. Derek stopped by his desk on a Friday afternoon and said, "Carter, that session was not bad." And Ethan said, "It was kind of bad, Derek." And Derek said, "Yeah, it was kind of bad, but it wasn't nothing." And that was, Ethan understood, the highest compliment Derek had paid anybody in the office all year. Lena came over 3 or 4 times a week. Never for long. She did not eat dinner with them every night. She did not sleep over. She did not become a fixture. She came on Tuesday to help him read the letter from Vivian's lawyer properly, line by line, with a yellow highlighter, and she connected him to an attorney a cousin of hers knew in Hartford, a woman named Priya Malhotra, who took the case on a sliding scale and who, after reviewing the file, told Ethan in her soft, precise voice that Vivian's petition was, in her professional opinion, aggressive and thin, and that if he could show 30 days of stable employment, consistent school attendance for Maddie, and a supportive relationship with the maternal grandmother, the petition would very likely be dismissed at the initial hearing. He had all 3. He had them because of the woman sitting next to him, who was not taking credit for any of them. Carol started coming over for dinner on Wednesdays. She had not set foot in his house since the day after the funeral. The first Wednesday she came, she stood in the kitchen doorway for a full minute before she could make herself step in. And when she finally did, she went straight to the sink because the sink was where Sarah had been standing. And she put her hand on the edge of the counter, and she closed her eyes. And she said very quietly, "Hi, baby." And Ethan left the room, because that was not a moment he had any business being in. At dinner, Carol watched Maddie inhale 2 helpings of spaghetti, and she looked at Ethan over the top of her wine glass, and she said, "You're cooking now?" And he said, "I'm trying." And she said, "The sauce is from a jar, Ethan." And he said, "Yeah, but I put things in it." And she laughed. Carol laughed, for the first time in 18 months, a short, dry laugh. And Maddie looked up from her plate and looked at her grandmother like she was seeing a rare bird. The custody hearing was set for a Thursday. Lena did not come. "It would look wrong," she said. "I'm not family. I'm not counsel. I'd be a question mark the judge doesn't need to ask." She drove him to the courthouse and she waited in the parking lot in a rental car for 3 hours with a book she wasn't reading in her lap. And when he came out with Priya and with Carol at his side and told her through the window that the petition had been dismissed with prejudice, she nodded once, and she said, "Good," and her hand on the steering wheel did not entirely stop shaking for another minute. Vivian had not come to the hearing. She had sent a junior associate from Halston and Reeve, who had clearly not been briefed on the emotional stakes, and who had been visibly unprepared for Carol, Carol of all people, Sarah's own mother, getting up on the stand and saying under oath, in a voice that did not waver once, "My son-in-law is a good father. He is not a perfect one. He has had a very hard time, but he is not unfit, and I will not sit here and let my younger daughter try to take my granddaughter away from the only parent she has left, because she is grieving badly and has channeled that grief into something that looks like love but is not." In the hallway after, Carol had pulled out a tissue from her purse and blown her nose with the fury of a woman who has just said a thing she has been holding in for a year, and she had turned to Ethan and said, "That's the last favor you get from me in a courtroom, so don't push it." And he had laughed, because what else could he do? Vivian called him 2 days later. She was crying. She said she was sorry. She said she had been out of her mind. She said she had watched her sister die, and she had watched Ethan fall apart, and she had convinced herself the only way to save Maddie was to save her from him, and that she saw now she had been wrong. And she was in therapy, and she wanted to know if there was any universe in which he would let her see her niece again. He told her he needed time. She said she understood. She said, "I'm sorry, Ethan. I'm so sorry." And he said, I know you are." And he meant it, because by now he knew what sorry sounded like from the inside, and he could recognize it. He had not forgiven her, but he had stopped hating her, which was, he was learning, not the same thing as forgiveness, but was the first step on the road to it. The rest was going to take a while. That was okay. He had a while now. On day 24, Lena took him to a park. It was a Saturday. Maddie was at Carol's for a sleepover. The leaves were almost all down. The light was the thin, low light of late November, the kind that makes every tree look like it has been drawn in pencil. They walked a loop around the pond. They did not talk much. Lena's hands were in her coat pockets. She kept stopping to look at things. A heron standing in the shallows, a little boy in a red hat throwing bread to ducks. His mother kept telling him not to throw bread to. "You've been quiet this week," Ethan said. "I know. Everything okay?" She looked at him. She smiled. It was the first smile he had ever actually seen on her face, and it was small and it was tired and it was a little sad. "I'm always quiet at the end," she said. "The end. Day 30. It's Thursday." He had not somehow allowed himself to do the math. Now that she had said it out loud, it sat in his chest like a cold stone. "Right," he said. "I'll be gone Friday morning, early. I'll say goodbye to you Thursday night. I don't do airport goodbyes or driveway goodbyes. I do them inside, short, standing up, and then I leave." "Lena." "Yeah." "Does it have to be like that?" She stopped walking. She turned to face him. A kid on a scooter went past them. A dog barked at a squirrel. "Yes," she said. "Why?" "Because I told you on the first night that it would be. And because every single thing you have rebuilt in the last 24 days has to hold without me. Or it wasn't really rebuilt, it was propped. You don't know that yet. You don't know it because you're still in it. But 6 months from now, if you don't know how to be that father without me in the passenger seat, then I did not do my job. I did something else. Something worse. Something that looks like help and is actually dependence. And I will not do that to you. I will not do that to her." I'm not asking you to. I know you're not. I know. Ethan, I know." She looked away, out across the pond. "This is the hard part. For me. For all of us. This is always the hard part. The first week is easy because you're drowning and I'm the life ring. The middle is the work. The end is the letting go, and the letting go is the only part that matters, because anybody can throw a life ring. Not everybody can let go." He was quiet for a long time. "Can I ask you something?" "Yes. The thing I saw. The other night. On the step. On my face. On your face. When you were about to leave." "Ethan. I'm not. I know what you're going to say. I know this isn't. I'm not asking for that. I'm really not. I'm asking because I want to know if I saw it or if I invented it, because these days I don't always know the difference. She didn't answer for a long moment. You saw it, she said. You didn't invent it. Okay? And it doesn't change anything. I know. I have rules, Ethan. I have them for good reasons. I have watched what happens when people in my position do not have them. I am not going to be the woman who saved you, because that is not a real relationship. That is a rescue story. And rescue stories end the minute the rescued person has to show up as a whole adult, because rescue stories don't have room for whole adults. They only have room for saviors and drowners, and I am not spending the rest of my life being your savior, and you are not spending the rest of your life being somebody's drowner. Neither of us would survive it, not in a way that mattered. I know. Do you? I think so, yes. Good. But don't. Lena. Don't, Ethan, please. He didn't. They walked the rest of the loop in silence. It was not an uncomfortable silence. It was the silence of two people who had said the thing and had agreed to leave it where it lay and had decided, instead, to keep walking, because there was a pond and there was November light, and there was, for a little longer, the two of them. At the parking lot, before they got in the car, she looked at him. 6 months from now, she said, if you're still standing, and you will be, you can call me. Not to see me, not for coffee. You can call me to tell me how she's doing. That's the rule I make with the ones who work. 1 phone call, 6 months out, 10 minutes. Then that's it. 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Okay. You will not make that call and feel fixed, Ethan. You will make it and realize you have been fixing yourself for 6 months without me. And that is the whole point. And then you will hang up and you will go pick your daughter up from wherever she is, and you will keep going because you will have figured out by then that that is what there is to do. Okay. They got in the car. She drove him home. She dropped him at his curb. She did not come in. She waved through the windshield. She drove away. He stood on the sidewalk in the cold, and he watched her taillights until they turned the corner at the end of Elmwood, and then he turned and he walked up the path to his house, and he let himself in, and the house was quiet, and it was empty because Maddie was at Carol's, and he sat down at the kitchen table, and he put his hands flat on the wood, and he breathed. Thursday was in 4 days. He knew what he was going to do. He had known, he realized, since the pond. Maybe since before the pond. Maybe since the hallway at the hospital. Maybe since the step in the front hall, when she had sat next to him and not touched him, and let him come apart in front of her without flinching. He was going to let her go. He was going to let her go because she was right, and because she was leaving whether he let her or not, and because the best version of him, the one she had spent 30 days carving out of the block of wood he had become, was a version that could love someone without needing them. And he was going to honor that version by not clinging to the woman who had made it possible for it to exist. But he was also going to make sure she knew before she got in that car that what had happened here had happened, that she had not been a function, that she had been a person, that she had been, for 30 days, the most important person standing in the doorway of his life, and that when she walked out of it, she was not walking out of it into nothing. He did not know yet, that Saturday night, what he was going to say on Thursday. He had 4 days to figure it out. Outside, the wind picked up, and the last of the leaves came off the maple in the front yard, and the streetlight at the corner buzzed the way it always buzzed, and a car passed on the wet street with that soft tearing sound tires make in late autumn, and in a rented gray sedan parked again 3 blocks away, Lena Brooks sat with her forehead against the steering wheel. She did this a lot. He would never know. And she took a long, slow breath in and a long, slow breath out. And she did not cry because she did not cry on the job, ever. And she told herself, for the 11th time in 6 years, that the rule was the rule for a reason, and she almost believed it. The 4 days between Saturday and Thursday did not move the way 4 days usually moved. They stretched and folded in on themselves the way time does when a person knows it is ending. Sunday he took Maddie to the diner, Millie's, the one Lena had taken him to on day 1, and he let Maddie order pancakes the size of her face, and Denise, the waitress, called her hone and winked at Ethan when Maddie wasn't looking, and Maddie ate almost all the pancakes and then fell asleep in the booth with her head on his arm, and he did not move for 40 minutes because he did not want to wake her up, and because his arm going numb was the smallest price he had ever paid for anything. Monday, he worked a full day. He ran his second analyst training. It was less bad than the first one. One of the junior kids, a quiet girl named Priscilla, who Ethan had barely noticed existed for a year, came up to him after and said, "That was really helpful, Mr. Carter." And he said, "Ethan, please." Just Ethan. And she nodded, and she walked away. And he sat at his desk for a minute with his hands on the keyboard and did not type anything because something in him had loosened again. Another quiet finger let go. Tuesday night, he made dinner for himself and Maddie and Carol. And it was meatloaf, and it was dry, and Carol said so. And Maddie said, "Grandma, don't be rude." And Carol said, "Madeline Elizabeth, I am not being rude. I am being truthful. There is a difference." And Maddie said, "Daddy, is there a difference?" And Ethan said, "Yes, Bug, but only if the person being truthful is also being kind." And Carol looked at him over the table and said nothing. And he understood that something had closed between them that had been open and bleeding for 18 months. And she was not going to say so out loud, because Carol was not a woman who said such things. But she had just taught him a lesson about kindness and truth in front of his own daughter. And she had done it in the voice of a grandmother, not a grieving mother. And that was how Carol said the big things, in the margins, between the lines, while pretending to be annoyed about a meatloaf. Wednesday, Lana did not come over. He had expected that. She was, he understood, starting to pull back, the way a person pulls their hand back from a stove slowly so they don't startle anyone, including themselves. He used the day to think. He sat in his kitchen in the afternoon with a legal pad in front of him, the same yellow pad he had used to write his pitch to Derek 3 weeks earlier. And he tried to write what he wanted to say to her on Thursday. He got as far as "Lena, I want you to know." And then he stopped, because what he wanted her to know was bigger than a sentence and smaller than a speech. And he was afraid if he wrote it out ahead of time, it would come out of his mouth the next day, sounding prepared. And she would hate that, because she hated everything that sounded prepared. So he put the pen down. He let the pad sit there, blank. And he spent the afternoon doing small, honest things instead. He cleaned out the closet where Sarah's winter coats still hung. Not all of them. He couldn't do all of them yet. But the camel-colored one she had never liked, the one she had bought on sale and then complained about for 3 winters. He took that one down, and he put it in a paper bag. And he drove it to the Salvation Army on Route 9 and handed it to a volunteer named Hector, who did not know whose coat it was or what it meant. And Hector said, "Thank you. Have a good day, sir." And Ethan drove home with the passenger seat empty where the coat had been, and he did not cry. But he turned the radio on for the first time in a year and a half, and he left it on the whole way, and he did not change the station, even when a song Sarah had loved came on. And he listened to the whole song, and at the end of it he said, out loud in the empty car, "I miss you, babe." And then he said, "I'm going to be okay." And he meant both of them, which was something new. Thursday came. It came the way Thursdays always come, which is to say, without any particular fanfare. The sun rose over Elmwood, Connecticut, the way it had risen over Elmwood, Connecticut for 170 years. He got up, he made Maddie's lunch, he put the good crackers on the left side. He wrote, "Have the best day, Bug. Love you, Dad," on a napkin. He drove her to school. He drove to work. He ran a meeting at 10. He ate a sandwich at his desk at noon. He came home at 5. Lena arrived at 7. She rang the doorbell, which she hadn't done in 2 weeks. She had in the last 2 weeks just knocked, and sometimes just walked in. And when he opened the door, she was standing there in the same wool coat she had been wearing the first night, the long charcoal one, and she was holding her leather portfolio under her arm, and she was not wet this time because it was not raining, and she looked at him and she said, "Hi." And she came inside and he closed the door behind her. Maddie was at Carol's. That had been Lena's idea, 2 weeks ago, when they had first talked about the end. "You'll want that hour to be just yours," she had said. Not hers. Not anyone's. Yours. He had not argued. He had asked Carol to keep Maddie for the night. Carol had nodded and asked no questions, which was, for Carol, its own kind of love. In the kitchen, Lena set her portfolio on the counter. "I'm going to make this quick," she said. "I have a 6:40 a.m. train out of Hartford tomorrow. I want to be in bed by 10. "Okay. I have some paperwork from the foundation for you. It's nothing dramatic. It's a consent form you sign saying you were a voluntary participant, and a release form saying you won't sue us, and a feedback form." The feedback form is optional, but I'd appreciate it if you filled it out. It helps them place the next caseworker with the next person. There's no wrong answer. If you want to write that I was a pain in the ass, write that I was a pain in the ass. They can take it. You were not a pain in the ass. I was sometimes a pain in the ass, Ethan. Yeah, okay. Sometimes. She slid the papers across the counter. He picked up the pen. He signed them without reading them. He filled out the feedback form in 2 sentences, which he wrote without stopping, and he slid it back to her face down. I'll read it on the train. Okay? Anything else we need to go over? No. The lawyer Priya, you have her number. You'll keep seeing her quarterly for the next year. That's in the notes I gave you Monday. You know where they are? Desk drawer, second from the top. I know. Your budget? You're out of the red next month if you keep to it. The 15% pay cut stings now, but it'll be gone in 2 quarters when Derek moves you off probation. Don't let him forget to move you off probation. Put it in your calendar for March 1st. Email him the day of. Don't wait for him to bring it up. Got it. Maddie's parent-teacher conference is the week after Thanksgiving. Don't miss it. I know you know. I'm saying it anyway. I won't miss it. Good. She was looking at her hands now. She had put them flat on the counter, which was a thing she did when she was about to do something she didn't want to do. He had noticed sometime in week 3 that she did it, and he had not mentioned it because he had sensed that it was a private thing, and private things were the one kind of currency he owed her after everything. Lena. Ethan. Before you go. Okay, I want to say something, and I want you to not interrupt me. I know you're going to want to interrupt me. I know you have a rule about it. I'm asking you as a favor to break the rule for about 2 minutes. She looked up at him. Her eyes were very steady. 2 minutes, she said. 2 minutes. He took a breath. I'm not going to ask you to stay, he said. I want to say that first. I'm not going to do that. I know why you can't. I know why you shouldn't. I know that if you stayed because I asked you to, I would spend the rest of my life trying to be worth the asking, and I would fail, because nobody can live up to that, and I would end up resenting you for a thing I did to myself. I understand that. You don't have to explain it to me again. She did not interrupt. But I'm not going to pretend either, he said. I'm not going to let you walk out of this house tonight and tell yourself I was a job. I know the rules of your job. I read between the lines of your rules. I know why the rules exist, and I think the rules are good, for most people, for most cases. And I'm not asking you to throw them out. I'm asking you to hear me say one time, out loud, because I owe it to you and to me, that you were not a job to me. You were not a caseworker. You were not a stranger who knocked on my door. You were the person who sat on my front step and did not say shh. You were the person who handed Carol a cup of coffee in a hospital hallway when you did not have to be in that hospital hallway. You were the person who drove to my curb at 7 in the morning on a Thursday in October with 2 coffees and a muffin for my kid. And what I feel about you is not a thing I am going to name tonight, because naming it would be the beginning of asking you for it. And I am not asking, but I am telling you it exists. It exists, Lena. And it was not a rescue, because I rescued myself, the way you said I would. And you were just the one who stood there and refused to look away while I did. He stopped. He could not tell if his voice had been steady or not. His face was hot. His hands were on the counter now, like hers, not touching hers but mirroring them. And he had not done that on purpose. Lena was looking at the counter. She was not looking at him. 1 minute left, she said. Her voice had something in it he could not quite hear. Okay, 1 minute, here's the rest. He took another breath. I'm not going to call you in 6 months. Her head came up. I'm not going to call you, he said, not because I don't want to. I want to. That's why I'm not. If I call you in 6 months, I'll be calling you because I need you to know I made it. And I don't need you to know I made it, Lena. I need me to know I made it, and I'll know. And if knowing isn't enough for me, then I haven't made it, and I shouldn't be calling you. I should be calling Priya or Carol or my brother or getting a therapist or doing something that is the actual work. The call, the 10-minute call you offer people at month 6, that's a kindness you do for yourself too. I know it is. I'm not saying that to hurt you. I'm saying that because I've watched you for 30 days, and I think I understand you a little. And I think the call you want from me isn't a professional check-in. It's a confirmation that the work mattered. And I'm telling you now, Lena, one time, and I want it to be enough. The work mattered. It mattered. You will never get a call from me saying so, and that is because it mattered. Do you understand? Bol aspol or spam. She did not answer. I don't need you to understand, but I needed to say it. That was the whole thing I needed to say. That was my 2 minutes. He stopped. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere in the house, the heating kicked on. The soft click of the thermostat, the faint rushing of the vents. He had stopped noticing that sound a year ago. He noticed it now. He noticed it because there was nothing else to notice. Lena's hand stayed flat on the counter. Her knuckles were a little white. Ethan? Yeah. That was the single worst and best thing anyone has ever said to me in this job. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Don't apologize for that. You are the third person who has figured out that the 6-month call is as much for me as it is for them. The other two were 12 years ago and 8 years ago. Most people take the call. Most people call at month 6 and tell me about their kid's soccer game and thank me and hang up. And it's fine. It's fine. But it isn't. It isn't what the ones who really made it do. The ones who really made it don't call. Because they don't need to. You just told me you're one of the ones who really made it. Before you've even finished making it. Which is probably why I'm standing here trying not to. She stopped. Her eyes were wet. He had not seen her eyes wet before. He had seen her on the night after the hospital with eyes that had gone bright but not wet, and there was a difference. Lena, I'm okay. You're allowed. I'm okay, Ethan. I'm okay. Give me a second. He gave her a second. He gave her a whole minute. The heating clicked off. A car went past outside. The fluorescent light over the stove had stopped flickering 3 weeks ago because he had fixed it one Saturday afternoon by himself, without needing to, because he had been able to. She wiped her face with the heel of her hand. Once. Efficiently. The way she did most things. I want to tell you something, she said, and I'm going to break my own rule doing it, and I don't care, because you just broke yours, and fair is fair. Okay. The thing you saw on my face that night on the step. Lena, you don't have to. I'm going to. Shut up. My 2 minutes. He shut up. I have had this job for 6 years. I have done it 11 times before you. I have in that time, not one single time, not one, looked at any of them the way I have, on 2 or 3 occasions, looked at you. Not one. And I'm telling you that not because I'm going to do anything about it. I am not. And we have been over that. And I am not. But because you deserve to know, for the same reason I deserve to know what you said. You were not a job to me either. You were a man sitting on a step telling me about a phone call at 3:07, and I was sitting next to you, and there was a moment in there where I understood something about you that I did not particularly want to understand, because understanding it meant I was going to have to spend the next 2 weeks being professional in a way that cost me something. And I did. I was professional. I did my job. I am going to get on a train tomorrow morning, and I am going to go home to my apartment in Brooklyn, and I am going to unpack, and I'm going to sleep for a day and a half, and I'm going to take the next case the foundation gives me in about 3 weeks, and I'm going to be a good caseworker for the next person, because that is what I do. But I am not going to tell you that you were nothing to me, because that would be a lie, and we have both had enough lies in our lives. She took a breath. 6 years from now, she said, or 10, or 15. If you run into me in an airport or on a subway platform or in a bookstore somewhere, don't pretend you don't know me. Come say hello. By then the rules won't matter anymore because by then you'll be somebody else and I'll be somebody else. And whatever we would be to each other will be ours to decide, not the foundation's. Okay? Okay. That is the only amendment I am making to the rules. Ever. For anyone. In my whole career, just you, just that. An airport, a subway, a bookstore, 10 years out. Hi. Hi. She laughed. It came out wet. That's all. Okay. That's all, Ethan. Okay. They stood there for a moment. Neither of them moved. Then she picked up her portfolio. She tucked it under her arm. She walked past him toward the door. At the door, she stopped. She did not turn around all the way. She said over her shoulder to the coat rack in the front hall, "Tell your daughter I said goodbye." "I will. She's going to be something, that kid. I know. Raise her well. I'm going to try. Don't try. Do." She opened the door. The cold November air came in, and the smell of wet leaves and the faint bark of Mrs. Alvarez's yappy little dog across the street, and she stepped out onto the porch, and she pulled the door closed behind her, softly, the way a person closes a door on a sleeping child. He stood in the hallway. He did not move for a long time. He heard her car start. He heard it pull away from the curb. He heard the engine fade down Elmwood and turn at the corner by the elementary school, and then there was nothing. He walked to the living room. He sat down on the couch, on his side of the couch, the one still indented where he always sat, and he put his hands on his knees and he breathed. He did not cry. He thought he would for a minute. He sat there and he waited for it, and it did not come. What came instead, after about 5 minutes of sitting in the quiet house, was something he had not felt in a very long time and could not at first put a name to. It was gratitude. It was a specific, clear gratitude, not for Lena, although also for Lena, but a gratitude for the shape of his own life, sitting here in front of him, whole. He had a daughter asleep at her grandmother's 3 miles away. He had a job he was reasonably good at and was going to get better at. He had a mother-in-law who, it turned out, had loved him the whole time. He had a brother on the other end of the phone. He had a lawyer he trusted, and a bank account that wasn't screaming at him, and a refrigerator with food in it, and a car that started, and a front door that, when the wind blew, did not whistle through a broken seal because he had replaced the seal last Saturday himself with a kit from the hardware store. He had most of all 30 days of evidence that he could build things. That was what she had really given him, not the fixed things. The evidence. She had stood next to him while he fixed them, and now he had the receipt. He sat on the couch. He looked at the photograph on the mantel. Sarah in the blue dress, on the beach in Rhode Island, 7 months pregnant, laughing. "Hey, babe," he said. He had not spoken to her out loud since the funeral. He had been afraid to. He had been afraid that if he spoke to her, he would be performing grief, or pretending she could hear, or doing something that wasn't earned. "I miss you," he said. "I miss you so much, and I'm going to keep missing you. And I've been so angry at you for leaving, which is insane, because it wasn't your fault. It was nobody's fault, and I've been angry at you anyway, because anger is easier than the other thing. I want you to know I'm not angry anymore. Or, I am sometimes, but I know what to do with it now. I know how to put it down when I need to pick up our daughter." He stopped. His voice was a little thick. He cleared his throat. "I met someone, babe," he said. "Not like that. Don't get excited. She was a kind of an angel, I guess. If you believed in those, which you did and I don't, but I'm starting to think there's something in between a person and an angel, and whatever it is, she was one. She's gone now. She walked out the door 10 minutes ago. You would have liked her. You would have given me grief about her, but I think you would have liked her." He smiled. He was smiling. At a photograph. "I'm going to take care of Maddie," he said. "I'm going to take care of her the way I should have been taking care of her the last year and a half. I'm going to tell her about you. The real stuff. The mailbox when you were 16. The way you used to light candles when it rained. The song you sang to her in the bath. I'm going to tell her everything. She is going to know who her mother was. I promise you, babe, she is going to know." He leaned back on the couch. He closed his eyes. "I'm okay," he said. To the room, to Sarah, to nobody, to everybody. "I'm going to be okay." He sat like that for a while. Then he got up and he went into the kitchen and he made himself a grilled cheese and he ate it standing up at the counter, and it was the best grilled cheese of his life, which is the kind of thing a person only knows about a grilled cheese if their life has come out the other side of something. He called Carol. He asked if he could come pick up Maddie, even though it was late, even though they had agreed she would sleep over. Carol said, "Is everything all right?" He said, "Yes, everything is all right. I just want to take my kid home." Carol said, "Come get her." He drove over. Maddie was in her pajamas, the ones with the little pink crabs on them, and she was half asleep on Carol's couch watching a show about a cartoon dog solving crimes. She looked up when he came in. "Daddy? Hi, Bug. Is it morning?" "No, Bug. It's still tonight." "Why are you here?" "Because I wanted to take you home." "Oh." She thought about this. She sat up. She held her arms out. He picked her up. She was warm and smelled like Carol's fabric softener and like her own little head, and she put her arms around his neck, and she said, into his collar, "Okay." Carol packed her backpack. Carol walked them to the door. At the door, Carol looked at him. "She left, didn't she?" "She left." "Good." "Good?" "Yes. Good. Because I watched you with her, Ethan, and I watched you with my daughter. And what you were with her was not what you were with my daughter, but it was not less. It was not less. Do you understand what I'm saying? It was something else. And you do not get those kinds of somethings else in a life more than once or twice. And I think she knew it. And I think she left anyway because she had a reason. And I am not going to ask you what the reason was because it is not my business. But I will tell you this. A woman who leaves for a good reason is a different kind of woman than one who leaves for no reason. And you will know, in your life, which kind you had. And if you ever get a chance at her again, and I mean her, not anybody like her, because nobody is like anybody. People are not replaceable. Stop trying to replace my daughter, by the way. I know what you've been doing on your phone. I've seen the apps. If you get a chance at her again, you take it. You take it. Ethan, do you hear me? I hear you. Good. Now take my granddaughter home. He took her home. He put her in her bed. He kissed her forehead. He sat on the edge of her bed in the pale crescent glow of the nightlight, and he looked at her, and she said, in the sleepy voice of a child fighting it, "Daddy." "Yeah, Bug." "Is the lady coming back tomorrow?" He paused. "No, Bug. The lady had to go home." "To her house?" "To her house." "Is her house far?" "Pretty far." "Will we see her again?" "I don't know, Bug. Maybe someday. Not soon." Maddie thought about this. Her eyes were already closing. "She was nice." "Yeah, she was." "She gave me a muffin." "She did." "I liked her." "I know, Bug. I know." "Daddy." "Yeah. I like you too." "I like you too, Bug." "A lot. A lot. Go to sleep." "Okay." She went to sleep. He sat there for a while, and then he got up, and he went downstairs. And he stood in the kitchen that had once been the worst room in the house, and was now, somehow, just a kitchen. He turned off the light over the stove. He went upstairs. He lay down in his bed. He closed his eyes. He thought of Sarah, and he thought of Lena, and he thought of Maddie, and he thought of Carol, and he thought of Derek, and of Priscilla, the junior analyst, and of the Salvation Army volunteer named Hector, and of Denise at Millie's diner, and of the fluorescent light above the stove that he had fixed himself. And he thought, not as a grand idea, not as a lesson, but as a quiet, small, true thing that sat in his chest like a pilot light, of what he had understood, somewhere around the middle of the last 30 days, and had been trying to find words for ever since. It was this: a life does not break in one moment, and a life does not get saved in one moment either. He had spent 18 months believing that his life had ended on a Tuesday at 3:07 in the afternoon, because that was the moment everything changed. And so he had treated everything after that moment as something he was just enduring, waiting to see how bad it would get. And what he saw now, what Lena Brooks had walked into his kitchen at 11:47 p.m. 4.5 weeks ago to tell him, without saying it, was that he had been wrong about which moment counted. The moment Sarah died was real. It was terrible. It was the worst thing that would ever happen to him, and he was not going to pretend otherwise. And he was not going to let anyone, including himself, suggest there was a silver lining, because there wasn't. Some things are just loss. Some things are just loss, and the only thing to do with them is carry them. And the only way to carry them is to get stronger, one day at a time, for the rest of your life. But the moment Sarah died was not the moment his life ended. His life had not ended. His life had kept going. His life had been going this whole time. And he had been missing it, because he had confused the loudest moment for the whole story. The real moments were smaller. The real moments were a knock at a door at 11:47 p.m. on a rainy Tuesday in October. The real moments were a bowl of soup from a can in his mother-in-law's kitchen. The real moments were a napkin with "I love you, Daddy" written on it in red crayon. The real moments were a 6-year-old asking if he could stay until she fell asleep, and him staying, and her falling asleep, and him staying anyway because he wanted to watch her breathe. Those were the moments that added up. Those were the moments that were, in the end, the life. He had almost missed his own life. He had been sitting in the dark of it for a year and a half, mistaking the dark for the room, and a stranger had turned the lights on. And what he had seen by the light was not a paradise, not a rescue, not a happy ending. It was just a house, a kitchen, a daughter's bedroom down the hall, a mother-in-law who still loved him, a job he could still do, a wife who had loved him, who had left him by accident, and who would not, he now understood, have wanted him to spend the rest of his days apologizing for being the one who survived. He was going to stop apologizing. That was the promise he made himself that night, in the bed that had once been theirs and was now his. He was going to stop apologizing for surviving. He was going to start using the surviving. He was going to raise the daughter they had made together, and he was going to do it badly, sometimes, and he was going to do it well, sometimes, and most of the time he was going to do it in between, because that was how parents did it. All of them, everyone, and he was no exception and never had been. And somewhere, on a train pulling out of Hartford at 6:40 the next morning, a woman with dark hair and gray-green eyes sat by a window with a paper cup of coffee cooling in her hand. And she unfolded a feedback form she had not yet read, and she looked down at it, and she read the 2 sentences Ethan Carter had written on it the night before. And the train went into a tunnel, and the light in the car changed, and by the time it came out the other side, she had folded the form back up and put it in the inside pocket of her coat, the pocket nearest her chest, where she kept the things that mattered. And she looked out the window at the gray Connecticut morning passing by, and she smiled, just a little, just for herself. And nobody on the train noticed, because nobody on the train knew that a woman named Lena Brooks had just finished her 12th case, and had lost one small piece of herself on a front porch in Elmwood, and had also, in the same 30 days, done the best work of her life. 2 sentences he had written, on the feedback form, just 2. She did not save me. She reminded me I was still here. And outside the train window, the sun came up over a state he was not on. And in a house in Elmwood, Connecticut, a 6-year-old girl woke up and padded down the hall in her pink crab pajamas and climbed into her father's bed and burrowed under the covers next to him. And he was already awake because he had slept 4 hours and it had been enough. And he put his arm around her and he kissed the top of her head and she said, "Daddy, can we make pancakes?" And he said, "Yeah, Bug, we can make pancakes." And she said, "The good kind." And he said, "The good kind." And then they lay there for another 15 minutes, not getting up yet, not having to, because it was Saturday, and because the day was theirs, and because for the first time in a very long time, he was not counting the hours until it ended. He was counting, instead, the ones ahead. That, it turned out, was the whole thing. That was what she had come to teach him, and what he had learned, and what he would carry for the rest of his days, and what, if he did it right, and he was going to do it right, he would one day pass on to someone else, because that was how this worked. You do not pay it back. You pay it forward. Somebody knocks on your door, you answer. You do not look away. You stay on the step. You do not say shh. And the life, the small, broken, beautiful life that you had forgotten you were living, it comes back. It comes back. It had come back to him, and he was not any more going to waste it.